Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today we're doing an overly specific book recommendations for books about space and space travel. I have a mixture of fiction and non-fiction to talk about today, and these are either like cozy sci-fi or non-fiction books about space, NASA and space travel in general. Let's jump in. The book that I finished most recently that was really the inspiration for doing this video is The Six by Loren Grush. This is the story of the six first American women astronauts and their story through NASA. It is a non-fiction book looking at a biography of the six different women and their first times going up into space, culminating in the Challenger disaster that then essentially grounded NASA and the various inquests that went into that, because the second American woman in space was on that flight. It is a fantastic non-fiction book. It has that wonderful blend of the personal and then the more of the macro look, and it's a really fascinating look at these women's lives and their experiences within NASA confronting sexism. The reason why I keep prefacing this with American women is Russia did actually beat America to space with most of the landmarks, including first women in space, and they do talk a little bit about that there and the kind of Cold War and the sort of interactions between the two countries, especially focused around the space race. It's an interesting look at NASA after it's done the big achievement of going to the moon and sort of confronting what was NASA's role, job, kind of purpose in sort of the 70s and 80s, and how did they deal with the sort of pressure politically and socially to kind of keep being relevant and keep striving for new things. And then a really wonderful, inspiring look at what is going on now within space travel. It is a fantastic book. I gave it 5 stars. It's such a solid read. I did listen to it on audiobook and I do really like the narrator as well, so I'd recommend this all round if you are interested in science but maybe want more of the social side of things. There is not much about the science of space travel or rockets. This is very much a social history and a history of these women and their careers. If you like that but you're thinking I want a fiction rather than a non-fiction, I can recommend The Calculating Stars, which is the first book of the Lady Astronaut series by Mary Robinette Kowal. This is a wonderful historical sci-fi kind of book, which is basically looking at what if the space race was driven by an asteroid hitting Earth, causing Earth to basically be doomed, and probably like there's going to be crazy global warming and all life on Earth is going to cease in the next couple of decades. So we need to get off the planet, and off the planet pretty freaking fast. It is a wonderful mixture of mirroring real life, especially now having read The Six, knowing some of the requirements from NASA, like women needed to be pilots beforehand and various things like that. It really does mirror what actually happened to these women as lady astronauts. That was even a term that the press used in real life that then gets used in the book. But then also goes off on a bit more of a tangent, counterfactual, what if, trying to make the race to the moon become something that women were more heavily involved in and get their involvement earlier from like the very beginning basically, and have this much bigger external pressure of why we're doing this that adds a lot more kind of conflict to it. I've read the first 2 books. They're really interesting. There is a slight sort of social justice 101 energy to them. There's definitely, like, the book 1 deals with sexism and book 2 kind of goes down more of a racism road, and it can feel a little bit heavy-handed there, but I really enjoy the cast of characters, and that one definitely interweaves in a lot more of the science of like rocketry and trying to get to space, and like I say, it does mirror sort of NASA's history a lot more closely, but is a really fun sort of rompy cozy sci-fi. So definitely would recommend. I have book 3. I really want to get to it hopefully this year. Really great book to check out. If you're saying this is all really interesting but I really want to know the foundations, the very beginning of NASA, you definitely need to check out Hidden Figures by Margot Shetterley. This is an incredible look at the like untold story of the African American women who helped win the space race, and this is a look at NASA going all the way back to before NASA was involved with space travel and actually was involved heavily with planes and pilots in the Second World War, where African American women and African American people in general were very heavily involved with that. The African American women in this book are called computers, meaning the kind of term before the actual technology came along, and basically maths used to be a woman's job where you'd sit down and crunch the numbers for the big men who had the big ideas and kind of check that the maths actually checked out. Isn't it crazy how now maths is seen as like a purview of men, whereas historically apparently it was more of a woman thing. Amazing how as soon as it's considered worthwhile doing, it no longer is classed as a woman's job. So this is a look at 3 or 4 women in particular following their careers and the various sort of achievements and oh god, what's the word I'm looking for, but like advancements that they helped make within NASA, and a look at how NASA started its foundations and how they got their first man into space. Again, first American man into space, because actually the first man in space was a Russian as well, and it is an interesting look at the relationships between the two countries in sort of time of Cold War and sort of tensions post Second World War, where we were allies, but then at this point things become a lot more tense and kind of fractured. It's really, really interesting. It has been made into a movie that has a couple of white saviour moments that fucking suck, but if you ignore those bits, it's a really, really good movie, and I would recommend both movie and book. Phenomenal read all around, and pairs really nicely with the 6. You could do this one and then immediately the 6, and you get this lovely long look at NASA's history. We're going a little bit more off the beaten track now, and I want to recommend One Way by SJ Moran. This is a really fun, quirky sci-fi crime book, which is basically where a bunch of criminals are trained to be astronauts to do some kind of pop-up thing on, I think, Mars, but then when they're out there, someone dies and suspicions land on the crew because, you know, they're the only people on Mars and they're all hardened criminals apart from the one corrections officer who's come with them. This book is silly and you see the plot twist coming a mile off, and I would not recommend it from a crime perspective, but from a space perspective it's actually really cool. They talk loads about the training, about what it's like to try and go up into Mars, and they talk about like the various different like tasks they're gonna have to perform and sort of the drills and simulations that they do back down on Earth, and then what it's like to actually go up onto the planet. So if you're looking for something a bit more rompy, a bit more silly and kind of B-movie style, this one I think you'll totally enjoy. It is definitely like sit on the sofa and smash it out couple of hours kind of a book, and I had a really good time with it, though there is a book 2 and I have zero interest in touching that. I think this is very much a flash in the pan moment. Read it once and then never again. If you want the nitty-gritty of how to actually live in space, you have to check out Packing for Mars by Mary Roach. Mary Roach is the unofficial queen of pop science books. I adore her work, and I do have a whole video talking about her, which I will link. Various locations, we do a dance and screw around with the focus of my camera. So this one in particular is, I think, one of my all-time favourites of her. It's sort of tied between this one and one or two more, but this is a look at the science of life in the void. What does it take to keep people alive out in space? And the answer is a lot, and most of it's really gross. So if you're someone who enjoys toilet humour alongside your science, this book is freaking perfect for you, because human beings are disgusting. Mammals are disgusting. We have so many bodily fluids and so many things that need to go into us and then back out of us. It is absurd and really, really entertaining. I read this one years ago, but I do think it's a great read, and Mary Roach has a wonderful sort of very light-hearted, fun way of approaching topics. Each chapter is focused on a slightly different area of what it's like to try and stay alive in space, so it can almost feel like a series of sort of mini podcast episodes as such as you're reading it. Great fun, amazing author, always check her out. Just like also by science writer. Another big name author that I think this list would be like, we couldn't do this list without mentioning, is Andy Weir. I've read all 3 of Andy Weir's books, which is The Martian, Artemis and Project Hail Mary. They are all incredibly fun books that look at the science behind what it would be like to live in space in various different ways. They're all fiction books. The Martian is probably his most well-known one that has been made into a movie with, I nearly said Mark Zuckerberg, but it's not, it's Matt Damon. And that is about a guy who gets left behind on Mars and then has to use his brains and science. He has a combination of botany and some other scientific skills to stay alive whilst rescue missions are launched to try and pick him up. I really like him. A lot of Andy Weir's characters are quite tongue-in-cheek, quite dry, quite sarcastic, and I really enjoy Andy, like Mark Watney, which is the character from The Martian's like point of view, and sort of his tone and his kind of character voice. It's all done in like log entries as well, which is really, really fun. Artemis is actually more about a crime ring on the moon. Great fun. And then Project Hail Mary is his most ambitious work, where he goes far more into the realm of sci-fi and has an alien species that he tries to sort of back the science up behind. So I think The Martian is the one that if you're looking for more realistic, as close to space travel as we currently have, it's the best one to go for. But I really do enjoy all 3 of his works. He does have a bit of a one-hit wonder kind of cookie cutter thing for his main characters. They are very similar each time, but you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If Hugh Grant can do it for every rom-com, why can't Andy Weir do it for every character? So I think he's solid. I really like him. And then the final one I do want to recommend is The Moon by Oliver Morton. This is probably my most hesitant of all the recommendations because it is the book I enjoyed the least. It is also the book that is sort of most like furthest away from the concept of space travel, as it is a look at the moon as an entity and gives us a bit of a history of both the moon and like humans' interactions with it, the science behind what we know of it. The reason why I'm slightly hesitant to recommend this book is because it is very overwritten and underwritten in many places. It's very lyrical, but I think it goes too hardcore into that. It relies incredibly heavily on extensively quoting external sources, and it just felt a bit bitty and kind of jumped all over the place. However, it was an interesting read that I definitely did enjoy in parts, and it does mention things to do with obviously the trip to the moon, so it does tie in nicely with all the stuff that we're talking about here, and there is a little bit of fun kind of history of science and history of ideas in here as well. So if you can get past Oliver's writing style, then there are some things to be enjoyed in it. However, do go into this one with kind of a pinch of salt, and if he's annoying you, I think you just need to walk away because it never gets any better. So there you have it. There is a collection of fiction and non-fiction books about space and space travel. Do let me know in the comments down below if you have any recommendations. I tried really hard with my sci-fi recommendations to bring it super close, super realistic, really focused on immediate sci-fi space travel from our planet, from our current day kind of level technology. That real like super cozy sci-fi, if you know what I mean. Obviously, I've read tons of other books in sci-fi that go out into the big wide world of space, and lots of them have really good science to back that up as well. So if you did want a general space sci-fi recommendations video, do let me know in the comments down below, but I feel like that's just a sci-fi recommendations video. And I think I have one of those, so if so, I'll link it in the various places. This is the link in the various places dance. Anyway, I'm gonna go, have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.